swiftly, Morrowind, and bring any allies you meet. Morrowind has need of you all.
Hi there, I'm Icehair, and I've had a few weeks to digest the announcement that the next big chapter in the Elder Scrolls Online is going to be returning to Morrowind. Of course, we've already been to Morrowind in Elder Scrolls Online, specifically to parts of mainland Morrowind. The new thing now is that we are going back to Vvardenfell, the part of the Dark Elven lands where the Elder Scrolls 3 was set. Now, I have really mixed feelings about this. Of course, the Elder Scrolls Online fans think it's going to be awesome, and the Elder Scrolls Online haters think it'll suck, and they're both right. This won't be a Morrowind remake, it'll just be another Elder Scrolls zone set in Vvardenfell, with a new class and new small-scale PvP mode. So if you love Elder Scrolls Online, you'll love this, and if you hate Elder Scrolls Online, you'll hate this too. My thoughts here are for those who, like me, take a more balanced view. Elder Scrolls Online has some parts that are good, and some that aren't. I miss Elder Scrolls Online's vast set of abilities when playing the single-player games now, but the single-player games also have a level of immersion that I miss very badly in Elder Scrolls Online. So my first reaction hearing about the Elder Scrolls Online Morrowind was excitement. I'm an Elder Scrolls addict, and Morrowind occupies a special place in my heart because, although I played Daggerfall back in the 90s, it was the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind that hooked me. Not only have I played that game more than probably any other video game ever, it's also what got me to play Oblivion and Skyrim and even Elder Scrolls Online, and even make YouTube videos. And in the Elder Scrolls Online, one of my favourite things has been exploring mainland Morrowind. So right there from the original launch in 2014, nostalgia hasn't just been bait for me, it's been actively boosting my fun. Mainland Morrowind and Elder Scrolls Online has got Dark Elves and Gwars and volcanoes and living gods and ancestor worship at tombs where the undead alternate between keeping their protective hand over their offspring and going into a frenzy that lays waste to the countryside. You know, oh no, it's not necromancy, you ignorant outlander, it's family. A completely different tradition. You get out of here while I put Auntie Lilith's bones together with Uncle Pharaoh's to build this giant bone column and... Oh, wait. No, Auntie, don't! Help! But this time around, the Dark Elves were learning the dangers of such necromancy that were ingrained parts of the culture of single-player Morrowind for the first time. So it wasn't just that a fair amount of the stuff that I liked about the original Morrowind had returned. At the same time, I literally got to see more than in the single-player game. Here was much of the mainland Morrowind that was missing from the original game, and this allowed me to learn new stuff about Dark Elven lands and culture. But at the same time, my second reaction to the Elder Scrolls Online Morrowind announcement was dismay, because one of the things I've liked the least about the Elder Scrolls Online so far was visiting Skyrim. Maybe it was just because lots of the Nords suddenly had a German accent instead of a Scandinavian one, or maybe it was that, unlike mainland Morrowind, Skyrim in Elder Scrolls Online was really nothing new, just parts of the same areas as in Skyrim, but without so many of the features that made the place seem physically real, like items you could actually knock over or throw around in the world, as opposed to just picking them up as in Elder Scrolls Online, and the only way to get rid of them is to destroy them. You can't drop them into the world. I missed mammoths who could fill grand soul gems, giants that could hit you so hard you'd be sent into orbit, quest NPCs that you could try to actually pickpocket, enemies who would drop gear that they were seen to carry instead of just random rewards. Now, I don't even know exactly why my experience of this area was so different from mainland Morrowind. After all, most of the features that I missed in Elder Scrolls Online were very much placed in Morrowind as well, and of course Elder Scrolls Online's rendition of Skyrim had other NPCs, other quests, a lot of new stuff. It just didn't feel like it added any new insights into Nord culture, like you might conceivably expect from playing through parts of the history that must have helped shape the Skyrim of 900 years later. Maybe that was just me, and there was lots of stuff there that I just didn't notice, but either way, to me it just seemed to underline how much less immersive the MMO is compared to the single-player games. Skyrim in Elder Scrolls Online felt like I wasn't so much traversing a real world as a huge painting, where, as in an old point-and-click adventure game like Monkey Island or Indiana Jones, a few parts would be lit up as something you could activate and interact with, instead of actually handling real-world objects, and all the rest was just a backdrop facade. These faults of the MMO permeate the entire game, of course, but the contrast with a single-player rendition of the very same areas just seemed to highlight them to me. It simply felt like if I was going to immerse myself in Skyrim, the land of the Sons of Isgramor, I could do that much better in Skyrim, the single-player game. And now, just as with Skyrim, Elder Scrolls Online Morrowind is again recreating the very same lands that we've seen before, just the 700 years earlier version. So will this be better? Well, it's possible my bad experience with Skyrim in Elder Scrolls Online was because Elder Scrolls V Skyrim was technically so much more advanced than the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind that the MMO version just seemed a far more primitive attempt to render that world. Perhaps, for all its three-dimensional glory, the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind was still so much closer to the two-dimensional adventure game worlds that its MMO counterpart doesn't grate quite as much. And I'm certainly hoping that this time around they'll be able to tell a story that shines more light on the history and culture of Vvardenfell in the third area, that is, in the Elder Scrolls 3, instead of feeling like a tame rehash of the same locales as Skyrim and the Elder Scrolls Online did. All of this obviously remains speculation until the new chapter is released in July. But I'm not pre-ordering anything until I see what my money can actually buy. You want to know how Bethesda and ZeniMax can get my guarantee that I'll spend more money on their game? How about this? Give me an Elder Scrolls MMO that I can actually play with all those of my real-life friends who want to. Yes, I know they removed monthly fees, and that was great. Yes, I know they added console support, and that was great too. But get this, I still have subscribers and friends that have never been able to test out the Elder Scrolls Online because their game simply refuses to run on their PCs. They just can't get past the logon screen before the whole game crashes, and these are tech-savvy people with modern rigs instead of my antiquated system. I mean, the crashes and bugs were a big part of what gave the Elder Scrolls Online such a bad name at launch. So, after 3 years of more bug fixes, maybe it's time to get that game's stability nailed once and for all.